Live, all about how leaders don't play the victim. They embrace self-responsibility and empower so that you can empower your leadership journey. So I'm going to share today with you 3 common mistakes I see most women leaders make that I work with, many women leaders that I work with, and what you can do to overcome them and overcome that victim mentality mindset. And if you don't think this is relevant for you, I want you to have a listen, because yesterday I had a conversation with a client of mine, and what came out was, while she didn't see herself as having victim mentality mindset, she definitely was showing that and demonstrating that through her words and her actions and her choices. So before you discount that this may not be you, this could be you if you're doing a couple of these things. Or these are the 3 mistakes. I'm going to share with you the 3 mistakes that happen. Now, before I get all into that, I do want you to hit the like button or DM me if you have any questions at any time on this. Of course, you can drop it into the comments, as well as I have a masterclass coming up on Thursday, all about supercharging your productivity by embracing your leadership mindset. So if you want that, make sure you let me know. You can either drop in the comments and just say masterclass or leadership mindset, and I will get you a link to that as well. And of course, you can always check out the event page on LinkedIn as well. All right, so let's dig into this today. Now, 3 common ways that I have seen a lot of women talk about their situation is that the first mistake is that they blame the circumstances as to why the outcome is as it is. Yeah, before I get too many haters on this does not mean that your circumstance doesn't influence the outcome. What I really want you to think about when you're asking yourself whether or not you're being responsible, you're taking responsibility, or you're being the victim, is how you then respond to that circumstance. So, for example, if you are in the circumstance that the results didn't come as you wanted to, right? So the sales had fallen through, or maybe production wasn't as effective or as efficient this month as it had been expected. So your results didn't match the KPIs that you'd set for this quarter. It happens, right? In every type of business, in every type of environment, you will have really good months and really good quarters, and you'll have quarters and months that disappoint or don't match what the expectations were. Now, in this case, yes, we can blame the circumstances, and sure, there's a very valid argument in order to explain the circumstances. However, where I want you to watch when it comes to playing the victim versus taking responsibility is if you're going to lay the entire blame there. And how do I mean that? So when you could look at a situation or circumstances and you want to start taking responsibility, your responsibility lies in how do you respond to that? Did you take every action you could have within the circumstances that existed in order to move you closer to your goal, in order to move you to achieve the results that you would wanted to achieve? If the answer is yes, then you're taking responsibility. If, however, you've allowed the circumstance of, like, well, the sales, it's just a really tough market out there, it's just not possible, and therefore kind of eased back from moving forward and taking action, then I would challenge you that you're in that moment in that victim mentality. Now, I know a lot of women that are high achievers, and they are going to push incredibly hard. And the flip side of this, I want to share as well, before I'll finish off the first sentence, that won't recognize that they're doing this, right? They won't recognize that, hey, I've just taken the time to blame the circumstances rather than thinking, what could I have done more, or what could I have done differently in this moment in time? And this is not a male female thing, right? I work with mainly women leaders, but you can recognize these same 3 mistakes happening within your teams. Another example of blaming the circumstance. So, for example, this could be much more also in your work-life balance. You decided that you had a specific personal engagement that you wanted to attend. And then at the last minute, a meeting came in, and it was a meeting with a client, and you had to take this client you had to take this client meeting over that personal engagement that you would really wanted to and wanted to get and wanted to attend. Now, what do you do? So if you are going and coming and we're having conversations like, well, I had no choice. I had to show up, and this client's important, and I had to go ahead and do it. Then be really clear with yourself that in that moment, when you're saying you don't have a choice, that you simply had to do it, that you're in this victim mentality. And that means you are just allowing the circumstance to dictate both how you feel, but also what you're doing, because there's always the choice of having that conversation. Just say, listen, I'm not available at this moment in time. Let's find a new time to reschedule. And then you make a choice, but make a very conscious choice. You could also make the choice that you're choosing not to do your personal engagement and going to meet that client. That is also a choice, but be empowered in the choice and take the responsibility that you made the choice. To be just really blunt, you can either be a leader or a victim, but you can never be both. And that requires responsibility, taking the responsibility for yourself. So the first mistake I often see, one of the first common mistakes I see, is that you are blaming the circumstance rather than taking responsibility for the actions, thoughts, and behaviors that you are in control of. Now, the second one is the expectations of others. So you may find yourself, I should say, is going, well, but my boss really expected me to do this, or my family really expected me to do this. And for women, especially if your mothers are still alive, it could also be, oh, my mother, she's so fantastic at guilt, and they expected this of me. So, in that moment, what you've done is you've taken the power that you hold and you've given it to somebody else. You've simply handed it off to somebody else and their expectations and said, here you go. You have now the ultimate power over me. Now, I know you might think, oh, that's ridiculous, but think about this. In that moment that you choose to meet someone else's expectations, and you have framed it in a way, again, as not really having a choice, you need to do this, et cetera, because otherwise this and this will happen. And maybe that this and this will happen is, well, they're going to be upset. They're not going to be happy with me. They're not going to like me anymore. They're going to judge me for not being as committed or as a potential, a good leader. Well, all of those things you are A, assuming, and B, you cannot make someone feel anything. That's their choice. That is what they are doing to themselves. Similarly, no one can make you feel a certain way unless you allow it to happen, you choose for it to happen. So when we're talking about this common mistake of the expectations of others, I really want you to sit with this and consider, if you're finding yourself blaming someone else's expectations for either a choice that you're making, a decision that had to be done, or an action that you're taking, or a non-action. What do I mean by that? So going back to that second example of having that personal engagement versus needing to meet with a client, you could choose at this point in time that your personal engagement is more important, and that the expectations that the client has, or even maybe your management or your leadership team has at that moment, they need to manage that. They need to, but you also need to choose to manage how you're going to feel about that. All right. So let me know, drop in the comments if that makes sense. If you've got any questions, make sure you either drop it in the comments or DM me. Now, the third mistake that I often see that's happening is that they're making the emotional triggers, and we've already kind of highlighted this through the other two mistakes, is you're allowing your emotions to be triggered by those of others. So again, similar to those expectations, right? If you're If your boss is asking you to work extra, or taking on more projects, even though you've got more than enough work that you could do, because, hey, you know what, you're the best person for the job, or no one else is going to do it. Could you pick it up? And you're feeling like, I need to take up more work just to prove that I'm capable and I can take on more responsibility and I can handle more responsibility. Own that. The fact that you got triggered emotionally and that you are fulfilling a need by taking a specific action. So in the case of your manager giving you, or your leadership team giving you even more work on top of what you've already got, and you're deciding, hey, you know what? I need to prove that I'm capable. Own the fact, be responsible in that moment, and own the fact that you are the one that is driving that decision. It's your responsibility to then either choose to say no, or to find an alternative that could work better for you. And another way to look at this. So, for example, maybe there's something that occurred in a work environment that isn't fair, right? You might have experienced a really poor onboarding procedure. You may have experienced harassment, or you may have experienced bullying at work. Now, I am in no way condoning bullying or harassment at work at all. So I just want to put that out there. What you can do is, depending on how do you then take the action. Are you allowing yourself to be emotionally triggered, which is understandable, but are you then falling into a victim mindset, or are you then going to take responsibility for yourself to move yourself in a positive forward direction, getting the resources that you needed to have? In the case of, for example, if your onboarding didn't go very well, rather than simply complaining about it. So we're getting into a little bit more of a common territory, right? Complaining. We all like to complain. I always have to laugh. I live in the Netherlands, and oftentimes it's like, well, we all complain about the weather. It's either too dry, or it's too hot, or it's too wet, or it's too cold. So, but in that, you're actually, again, giving your power away. You could really go like, hey, you know what? Today it's really sunny. Wonderful. Fantastic. I can't change anything about the weather. So we're going to take the actions that allow me to match that weather at this point in time. Same with when you go and you're talking about this onboarding process, for example. It didn't go well. Hey, I've had a situation where I came in and I had four days to prepare an entire semester's worth of workload. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I could have sat there and just simply complained about it. Or you can look at it very constructive, like, okay, well, what could we change about this structure in the future? How do I take responsibility to both get the work done, and get myself where I needed to be? And how can I give constructive feedback so that it looks different for a future? Because if you are simply in the complaining stadium and that's where you stay, you're going to be a victim. Now, I will recognize this point that most of these are the women leaders that I work with. Yes, there is complaints. It's usually, especially if you're moving up the organization, you're not simply complaining. I'm just trying to highlight a few extra little tweaks where you are giving your personal power away, the power that you hold within yourself, and really that ability to be that authentic, really grounded, confident leader for yourself, by allowing yourself the reasons or excuses to be outside of yourself. So start looking inside yourself for things that you can control. What you have responsibility over is your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs, who you're showing up to be, and who you are, and what you're doing. Those are the things you are responsible for. When you manage those, what you'll notice is around you, it's going to make a huge difference, because you're showing up differently. It's going to make your team show up differently. It's going to make your colleagues show up differently. And you have my entire permission to call people out on the BS and when they're being in that victim mentality, because being a victim isn't empowering. It's very easy to be a victim, and it's a lot harder to take responsibility and be a leader. But again, let me repeat, you are either a leader or a victim. You cannot be both. All right. So again, the three most common mistakes: you're blaming the circumstances. Two, you're meeting up and blaming the expectations of others for things you're doing. And three, you are not taking responsibility for the emotional triggers that a circumstance or situation is having on you, and making sure to neutralize them. All right. I know this is it's a very big topic. So if you have more questions, please let me know. Drop them in the comments. You're always welcome to slide into my DMs and ask me any questions there as well. And as always, I still have a couple of spots open for one-on-one coaching. So please, if you are interested in this, if you want to take your leadership to the next level, or you're looking for a sparring partner, or you are really wanting to figure out how do I create this career that I love and balance it with my personal needs as well, then DM me, Leader, and let's have a conversation. It has been wonderful sharing this with you today. And as always, I look forward to sharing with you the next time, and ask any questions you've got in the comments or in my DMs. Talk